When was the last time you failed? If you remember, if you have specific events that come to mind where you are referencing to a single moment and you're like, yeah, that was when I failed, and never doing it again, you might be doing it wrong. Failure, it needs to be a practice to the point where you can't even remember when your last time failing was. Because what usually occurs is that we take these moments that we have had intense reactions to, that we felt uh, intense rejections to, and we plant them in our heads. And they're just etched in there as this warning, as this evidence of if you do anything, if you ever decide to progress with anything else in that similar way, where you take risks, where you take the possibility of failing and decide overcoming that fear is a better tool, then you know where you're going to end up. You know what type of pain you're going to end up being in. So it acts as a warning, it acts as a stop sign. Immediately just stop. Don't even try. Don't even progress past. Don't even think about progressing, because remember where you ended up? Which is why failure is a skill. It needs to be something that is practiced. For some, it's easier to practice in a natural way. For some, it needs to be intentional. For a lot of people, it needs to be intentional. Because those who decide not to practice it, it is safer for them to suffer. They've decided that it is safer for them to suffer than to act boldly, which this is a statement that I got from this mini essay that was posted on Instagram. And I'm going to read you a little bit more of the things that they wrote on it as well later on the video, but I'm going to make that section 1. It is safer to suffer than to act boldly. Not everything in life has a set way to get, actually, just everything, we could even conclude. With everything that we want to actually achieve, people say dream big, right? If you are a big dreamer, or if you start off in that way, for that to be a reality, you're gonna have to take big steps, bigger risks, act, boldly. You have to act even more boldly than you would in other ways. It goes for everything. I can't really level what dream big is, because it's different for everyone. It's just that end for everyone, for every single person, we all have that one big place that we want to be in, or several places that we'd want to be in, and to, get that path, get that door, get those doors open for us. Well, it usually requires action. Failure is exactly where that door is at. Because, I don't want to get into deep metaphors and stuff. Like, I don't know, it just comes to my head and I'm like, what are you saying? It's something that is going to be right alongside every little risk that you take. In fact, it's going to be pretty much like 95% of the time. This is purely like for the dramatics. I don't know how many percentage. It's not something that can be measured, but usually you're going to be, and your expectations should be that way as well. Not to be negative, but to just feel more comfortable about the reality, so that these are not things that will get you down. So failure is going to be right there, and I think from after the first few experiences of them, it is going to seem like the correct way to handle them or to deal with them or to negotiate with them is to avoid them. So that is where we misinterpret what suffering is. Because in order to avoid this type of suffering, or what we've mislabeled is that we end up actually experiencing suffering of not doing anything. The suffering of living every day, lying to ourselves about how we are happy, how this is everyone's experience, how this is just reality and dreams never usually manifest into anything anyway, how the world isn't fair, how things never work out the way we want them. So we end up lying to ourselves. We end up living in this same monotone way where we don't feel satisfaction, or we don't feel like we're even living because we're not doing anything for this fake protection wall that we've built from ever feeling the feeling of failing and rejection. So that's long-term suffering for you, which is why I'm saying it makes a lot of sense that it is safer. For sure, it's safer. It's much safer. There's not an immediate feeling or realization of it as we are living our daily lives because we are occupied most of the time. These are just things that will seep in once in a while, where we think about them for a little bit and then it vanishes because we're able to justify and explain it away. And then, especially in comparison with failure, because it hits you immediately, it's going to hurt you immediately. It's going to make you question your worth, your value, your skills, just any doubts you have about yourself. It's going to resurface everything, like in a very quick manner. What is it called? Like hurricane? Like a hurricane. The notion of ever having to deal with that level of intensity, although it will be short term, and you, especially as it develops and it turns into a skill, it is going to be it gets even shorter and shorter. A shorter, what is it, form of suffering. It is still going to be painful probably, but it's not going to be as painful as this diluted, where you don't even realize it, where you're not even aware of the suffering, but it's going to be very much long term, very convincing in its lies. All of that sounded intense, the way I explained it, but it is true. I think a lot of us avoid failure so much so that it does impact a lot of our lives, a lot of how we live, how we choose to lead a lifestyle, how we communicate with ourselves, how we deal with our insecurities, everything, right? Which is where section 2 is also linked to this. But I'll call it, I used to dream, then life happened. How many times have we heard that? Where everything gets to be swept under the rug because of the simple explanation that real life is much different than how we would imagine it, how our imagination had built it up as, how our dreams had built it up to be. So these excuses, it makes it much, okay, I don't want to say it's excuses. Obviously, everyone has different circumstances, and there are people that are genuinely not able to do the things that take the risk that they want to take because it's just simply impossible. And this is there are many exceptions. I'm talking, I think I'm talking about a very particular situation where there is the opportunity, but because of them having built the opposite skill of failure, which is the skill of avoiding any situations where failure is like a possibility, right? They link that skill that they've built as a reflection of how life is. And it is much more comforting to think that, oh, I just stepped into real life. This is how life is. This is, the unjustness of life. It's easier, it's comforting to think that way than to admit that there is nothing, than to admit that they have just let go of their dream because they are afraid. Because when it came, this is what I mean, right? Because it is very different from the things, it is different when it comes to how you approach your dreams from when you were a child, because this is when that is usually referenced, right? Because when I was a kid, I never knew about what the real world was like. So now that I've stepped into the real world, I know how things go. So I have to tap into reality. That's the argument. And you are definitely going to have a different view of how to approach your dream, how to think about it from when you were a child versus where you are now in your adulthood. Because, yes, there are things that you're going to be aware of. There is reality. It's mostly not all good and hopeful or fair. So there are considerations that need to be put in that way. But also, it is important to admit that when you stepped into real life and you encountered all these, sides of reality, it also intimidated you. It also taught you that you did not want to be feeling these uncomfortable feelings like failure when you have the option to hide. Life taught you that wanting things publicly is risky. Risky for your ego, risky for it's usually just your ego. But people usually confuse those things. Is it because you prefer a certain image of yourself to be protected that you are hiding? Or is it really because life happened, apparently. That's usually how it's condensed and said. I hope you got something from this. Section 3. I have to say, failure is an unstable skill. And I honestly don't get to speak a lot about it because I'm not at a age where I could technically talk about all of the failings I've had, because I haven't stepped into adulthood. Even though I am an adult, but I haven't stepped into adulthood. I'm still very young, and there are people with much more experience, with much more life that they've lived. But still, I mean, we have to acknowledge that just like any other skill, failure, it's not a clean one. It's not in any way, right? In any way that you decide to level up your life and you're trying to implement some things that might be better for your mindset, it's never a clean one. It's not something that you discover and it changes your life forever. It's something that you are still gonna fumble at times. It's still going to hurt. You're still gonna find yourself back in a mindset where you want to protect yourself, and you feel that it's actually all BS. It's better to just hide and to just than to just deal with all these symptoms. So practicing failure doesn't mean that rejection stops hurting. It doesn't mean that you stop measuring it or comparing it or counting your failures. It doesn't mean it's going to stop determining your worth in some cases, depending on the day, depending on how you're feeling. Sometimes it's going to be more emotional attachment to the results than others. Which leads us to section 3. This is where I humble all of us, okay? Including myself. Especially myself. It's not just you. People say, oh, just know that you're not alone. But I'm saying you're not special. You are not alone. If that's what you need, you're also not alone. But just realize that sometimes you have to realize you're not special. This isn't a big troubling thing that only happens to you. This is something that happens a lot. This is failure. It's a shared condition of just doing anything at all. Everyone experiences it. Everyone feels it in the same. Okay, maybe not. It happens all the time. It happens more times than it doesn't happen. That just means that you're participating in the world. You're living. Section 5 is the right motivation. I don't believe that failure should be romanticized. It isn't something that needs to be romanticized. It's not something you should be chasing after for the sake of this, I don't know, image of, ooh, I failed. I don't know, because I see a lot of things end up turning that way. We overcorrect a lot of things. We have to stop. It is something that shouldn't let define our story of who we are, what we're capable of. And that does take failure translating into a skill. So it's not necessarily that you go and chase failure, but it's that you go and live and failure is going to find you. This is what I meant when in the opening where I was saying, if you remember when you failed last, then you're doing it wrong. This is what I mean. It's not that you go and chase failure. It's just that you do things and it's going to find you. Failure shouldn't be the motivation for failing. The motivation should just be that you keep living and you keep doing things. Things that are going to benefit you, benefit your dreams, your goals. And failure is going to find you. And then that's how it translates into a skill where you can build that into a practice of never letting that be where you fall. because you're still going to keep doing it. You're still going to keep living, trying. Okay, I don't want to give any manual on how to practice this skill, but I came across this one video, and it said that the easiest way to the easiest way, I think one way that I like is that failure gets a limit. So you don't avoid the thoughts, you let them show up, right? But you make sure that you don't let one failure spiral into anything. You make sure that you set boundaries with yourself on how you are allowed to perceive failure and how many times it can happen before you can let yourself acknowledge it. So you're not avoiding anything. You are basically practicing the thing that I mentioned earlier about you not being special. It happens to everyone, and it doesn't mean that you don't get to feel or acknowledge your feelings, or that your feelings aren't valid. But it is a point of, this is a middle ground, So again, this is how failure can become a skill. It is a skill. You let it be. You let, I don't know, it depends on the person. And if you truly feel like it is something that you need to process it and feel out, then that's you. And that's how you get to decide. But just set a limit. For example, the video that I watched mentioned that in a day, she said that there must be 5 failures maximum where I can ignore them. Five failings is fine. I could get past it. It's regular. We will show up resilient and we will move on. The 6th time, that's when she is allowing herself to just fall for a little while, and she knows she's gonna get up. She knows that doesn't mean the end, but that's where you let things out, when you process your emotions and you see where it leads you, and you don't really allow it to lead you anywhere else, but except for it to clear your head and so that you can move forward. There is a lot of things out there on failure and how important it is to fail. I hope I provided a little bit of a neutral perspective. This is a short video, but it is a very subjective subject. I hope you got something out of this. And don't seek to fail, okay? Because that's not authentic. But if there's a risk involved in the things that you want to do, and that risk could be failing, then I say go for it, because you can handle it, because it will be an opportunity for that to become, or to be added into the portfolio in your failure is a skill book.